Hey Eurovision fans, I'm back with my series analysing the Eurovision Scoreboard, one of the largest fan polling apps, to see what are the interactions between Eurovision artists this year. We're going to look at the current standings, and then we're going to look at who was affected when these four countries entered the scoreboard, and then when Poland entered, and finally when Belgium entered. We'll see who are the favourites and what's the relationship between all the songs this year. So let's keep it. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Tom. I'm an Irish Eurovision analyst, and you can find all of this stuff on my Eurovision channel. So if you've been following my channel, you'll know this is a series that I did last year that some people enjoyed. I've decided to bring it back now because it feels like we've got a good amount of entries on the Eurovision scoreboard now. I also need a break from copyright because staying at home, uploading the same thing over and over again to try and get by copyright is absolutely killing me. So I need to do some videos without copyright for my sanity. And in fact, if there's any other of these analysis type videos that you want to see, leave a comment for me down below because I need to move away from copyright stuff. So the Eurovision Scoreboard app is an app that fans can download where you can rank all the songs that have been released so far from first to last, and then your top 10 are given points in the same way that the jury give points. All the points are added together and it gives a ranking of who's doing the best. I am not sponsored by them, I'm not affiliated with them, I'm just using their data. Another important thing to know about this app is that when a new song is released, your scores only count if you've rated the new song. If I entered my scores into the app a month ago and I haven't updated with the new songs, my scores don't count. Okay, so we're gonna join the scoreboard on Saturday, February 17th. This is the afternoon before a Super Saturday when 4 songs were picked. And we'll just go through quickly and look at what the rankings were like at that point. So at the bottom of the table, we had Albanian, Zemra Nadori. That song is undergoing a revamp, and apparently it is going to have a significant amount of English. I think it might all be in English actually. So that could change them up. They need to do something because they're bottom of the table. Germany in 13th place with 3.77% of the total points. And then we have 4 countries who have 4%. That is Malta in 12th, Czechia in 11th, Finland in 10th, and Latvia in 9th. We have 1 country on its own on 5%, that's Ireland with 5.4. Great to see Ireland not at the bottom, considering that we lived in the bottom 5 for the whole of last year. Luxembourg staying strong in 7th, so there's quite a big jump between Ireland and Luxembourg. You see there, 16,000 points, almost 2%, that's quite a large gap. And then Spain in 6th with 8, France with 8.5%, Slovenia almost with 9%, a big jump again up to the top 3. Norway in 3rd place, Gotising and Ulfaham with 11.02. Ukraine in 2nd with 12.85%. That is Alyona and Jerry Heil. And in 1st place, we have Angelina Mango with 13.13. So this was the state of the app when I first started recording the scores. I actually took a couple of scores earlier on, but nothing exciting really happened. So we have 14 on the table. And then on that Super Saturday, we had 4 new entries join. Another thing to note is that these percentages are color graded. So if you see a sharp change in color, that represents a big difference between the 2 numbers. Whereas you can see that Finland, Czechia, and Malta's scores are very similar, so that color of red is similar. And that's going to be the same in all the graphics I'm showing you today. The colors are proportionate to the difference. Okay, so let's look at the data that I took after Super Saturdays. I took this on Sunday afternoon, February 18th. So this was after Super Saturday. A little bit of time had passed. People had updated with the new entries. And at this point in time when I took this data, there were 10,250 people. The lowest ranked of the new entries was Moldova, taking 1.5% of the total points. So just to explain what these percentages are, I just add up all the points that are on the scoreboard and then I work out how much does that country have of the total points. So Moldova has 1.5% of all the points on the scoreboard. Pretty simple. So I haven't done any reactions to that song yet. I am going to do it once I kind of get over my copyright nightmare. So yeah, that reaction is coming soon. Our second new entry was Denmark, entering with 4.55% of the vote, and they ended up into 10th spot. Really great, kind of in the middle, kind of good for Denmark, to be honest. You don't often see Denmark in the top 10 of the Eurovision scoreboard. It's been a while. Our third new entry was Estonia, coming into 9th place with pretty much 5% of the vote. And then finally, our big new entry, screaming into the top 3 of the scoreboard, was Lithuania. Sylvester Belt singing Luktelk. He had 10.4% of the total vote. So now let's slot those 4 acts in and see how this affected everybody else. So what we're looking for here is how do these songs entering affect everybody else on the table? Eurovision is not just about how good you are, it's also about who's around you. You can have the best rock song in the world, but at the end of the day, if there's 9 other good rock songs in the final, everyone's going to get diluted down, as opposed to if they're the solo rock song on their own, they're going to get a lot more attention because they're going to have the niche to themselves. So who's around you is really, really important. When songs enter in, we can see who is the most affected because two songs have a very similar overlap. Okay, so first of all, I'm just going to show you these songs slotted in. As we can see, we've got a new song in the top 3, Lithuania. Great to see them so high. I think they were pretty high as well in 2020 with the Roo on fire. So in total, those 4 countries entering into the scoreboard take up 21.44% of the total points. Now, those points just didn't appear out of nowhere. They have been taken from other countries. So we're going to find out who did those 4 countries take the most points from. So let me introduce you this first column, which I call pure percentage point loss. So as these 4 countries come in and are put in people's top 10, which obviously need to be in the top 10 if you want to get points, they're pushing the existing countries who were there down a spot. So all these other countries are losing 1, 2, 3 points from all the new countries coming in. So this column is good for looking at the points that are going to affect the rankings. We're going to do a column later that shows better the relationships, but this one is just looking at pure points lost, and this is going to affect how people move up and down the table. Obviously, if you lose less points than the person above you, you're probably going to start catching up with them and eventually overtake them. So who did they steal those points from? The biggest points loss came from Luxembourg. 2.25% of the points taken came from Luxembourg. 2% of the points from the new people came from France. And then the third biggest loser was Germany, losing 1.8%. So my thoughts on Luxembourg is that I think it's in the kind of middle of a lot of people's tables. So even one of these songs coming in, Lithuania or Estonia or Denmark, going above them, because you're in the middle, you're more vulnerable. There's more spaces above you to be filled. So it's kind of easier to get pushed down. So I'm guessing this is just a lot of people having Luxembourg in the middle of the rankings. Estonia or Lithuania slotting in. Luxembourg is moving down 1 place or 2 places because of that and losing 1 or 2 points. I just don't think the Luxembourg song is one that a lot of people are going to have first on their table. Obviously, if someone's first in your rankings, they're kind of protected. You know, it's not very often that someone's going to put a new number 1 in. As for France, I'm not too sure what the relationship is here. I'm wondering, is there an overlap between fans of Luktelk and with Slimane? Possibly, or could it just be that Slimane's been on the table so long, a lot of time has passed, so he's starting to slip down. And then for Germany going down, often when new entries come into the scoreboard, they come in on a little bit of a high, and then they start to sink down. This thing happened last year as well, and my theory was that people were over-ranking a new song because they kind of wanted to show their love. But I have another new theory this year, which is that fans of the song are probably the quickest to update the app. So if you're a big fan of Germany and you're like, I love it, you're going to rush onto the app and go and give them 10 points or 8 points, etc. Whereas people who don't really care that much about who won, for example, a Rick fan or a Marie Rime fan, probably going to be in less of a rush to update the app. They're just going to be like drowning their sorrows, perhaps. And then what we see then is when the scoreboard is updated the next time and those people have eventually updated their scores, the new entries have kind of slipped down. This is something that happens almost every single time. One interesting thing to note here is that Finland didn't lose as many points as I expected. You can see here now in this first column, if everything is regular, it should be green at the top and get redder towards the bottom, but we can see that Finland is still quite green, showing that they didn't lose that many points at all. That is a bit of a surprise for me because I thought Estonia coming in would affect Finland because there is kind of the same happiness in the song. One theory for me on why they didn't lose that much is that possibly they did lose a lot of points from Estonia coming in, but then Lithuania, Denmark and Moldova didn't really have much of an effect. Only being affected by one of the 4 countries, maybe that's why they had such a small loss, whereas maybe some other countries like Luxembourg were affected by all 4 countries entering and so had a bigger loss. It could also be that Finland's just growing a little bit in popularity, so the points that they lost to Estonia, they also gained a couple of new followers in the meantime. Okay, so that's the first column, which is looking at the rankings. Not too much of a ranking change really. We just had Lithuania coming in, so everyone went down 1 place. Estonia and Denmark coming in, so everyone below then went down 3 places in total. Not a huge ranking shift really. Whereas the first column looks at what percentage of the points did a country lose. The second column looks at what percentage of the points did I lose. What percentage of my points did I give up? So this is better at accounting for countries who just didn't have very many points in the first place. And it's just a different way of looking at the numbers. Same as the first column, in a normal world, this should go from green down to red. So when the colors aren't in sequence, it means that something weird has happened. Again, we can see the countries at the top kind of unaffected. They're very green. They lost a very small percentage of their points stash. So Italy only using 8%, Ukraine losing 10%, Norway losing 11. And again, we can see France losing a little bit more than expected. They're kind of a little bit more yellow than the green either side of them. And Luxembourg, again, quite orange, so having a big loss. We can see here, though, Ireland is kind of a bit more green, keeping in character with the country. So Ireland was kind of less affected. Could just be the fact that Ireland is such a totally different vibe that they might have a little bit of a shield effect like Latvia and Croatia had last year. Last year, if you saw my series, Latvia and Croatia were completely immune to new countries coming in because people who loved that song just loved it and they weren't going to change their mind about anything else, and nothing else was very similar to what they had. Ireland is very much a unique country this year, so maybe that's showing a little bit of a shield effect. We can also see Finland, who we already talked about, not losing too much, and then Germany losing almost half of their points. So that 47.7 represents that Germany had 3.77% of the total points. Now they only have 2. So they've gone almost from 4 down to 2%. They've lost half of their points. That's a big deal, and that is probably, I think, due to the veneer of a new song being lost. So a little bit hard to discern which of those 4 new entries had the biggest effect on each country, but we don't have that problem with the next chart. So Poland released their song on Monday, Luna singing The Tower, and because she released on her own day, we were able to get a before and after of her effect completely on her own. So she came in with 4.2% of the total points available, and that slotted her into 11th place. So let's quickly have a look at the rankings. Obviously that pushed everyone below her down 1 spot, but interestingly as well, Denmark jumped ahead of Estonia, so Denmark gaining a little bit of traction. And we're going to see that now if we look at column 1, the pure percentage points lost. Remember, this is just where did that 42.2% of Poland's points come from. Actually, if you add up the entirety of column 1, it adds up to 4.19%. And we can see a lot of points came from Estonia, and I think this is the thing I talked about with Germany, where anyone who was an Estonia fan ran onto the app, put them very high on their list, and then all the stragglers who came a little bit later, probably not as much of a fan of Estonia. I think it's quite divisive, and so they probably were giving it a lot of 15th, 16th last places, and then because of that, Estonia got dragged down. We can see a similar thing with Lithuania being the 3rd biggest loser, losing 0.32% of the total points. Again, that could be the same effect as Estonia. These are 2 of the 4 new entries who came in the last chart. But another interesting thing here is that Ireland has lost 0.38% of the points, so the 2nd biggest points loser. And I wonder, is that a small overlap between Luna and Bambi Thug, in that they've both got kind of like a witchy look. I think Luna sonically is a little bit more poppy mainstream, but Bambi does also have a little bit of pop in their song. So there could be just this like slight overlap in kind of witchy looking people with an element of mainstreamness in their song. So I was interested to see that Ireland lost a disproportionately large amount of points from Luna being entered into the scoreboard. So those were the 3 biggest losers: Lithuania, Estonia, and Ireland. As I said, Lithuania, Estonia being new releases, I kind of expect that. Malta also being a surprisingly big loser as well, losing 0.32. I wonder, is that an overlap sonically in them both being female kind of pacey pop songs? So let's go to column 2, the relative points loss. This is what percentage of my points did I have to give up to the new person. And I think the biggest thing to notice here is that the smallest points loss comes from Italy. That's a pretty normal thing when you have someone who's on a lot of people's number 1 in their charts. They're just not going to lose that many points because they're going to stay number 1 or stay pretty high. The interesting thing here though is that the 2nd smallest loss comes from Denmark in 9th place, and that was what caused them to jump up 1 spot into 9th. Now I have a theory about this, in that this year Dansk Melodi Grand Prix was a national final with very, very little hype. I don't think very many people were interested in it. It was a little bit underwhelming in the musical excitement department. So I think when Saba was chosen with her song Sand, many people hadn't heard it. So I think that she entered onto the Eurovision Scoreboard, got a decent amount of points, and then since then people have actually started listening to the song, maybe for the first time, and discovering it, and that might be why she's getting a little bit more recognition and slowly moving up, because it's very unusual that she lost less than 1% of her points. That is really, really tiny, considering that Estonia lost over 10%, Moldova lost almost 20% of their points, Ireland, Latvia losing 10% of their points as well. Another, again, this should be green going down to red, so one color that's out of sync is Spain in 7th, minus 4.5, so Spain losing a little bit more than normal. what's the connection with Poland? I wonder, is that a little bit of a sonic connection? Both songs are quite easily listening, I think, despite the fact that Spain's song obviously has a lot of layers and meanings in it, which are quite spicy. The actual song itself is very pleasant to listen to. On the flip side, if we go lower down, we see where there should be red, there isn't. Czechia only losing 5% of their points, so losing a disproportionately small amount. And I think that's just because Czechia is kind of in her own niche, and I hope that we see this coming up more in the season, that she's kind of protected because she is the only female rock. Is she the only female rocker? She's currently the only female rocker. We may have a female rocker coming in for San Marino this weekend potentially, but at this point in time she's kind of got that niche to herself. She's a little bit protected there. Okay, so finally we had our 6th new entry, and that was Belgium. And again, this song was released on Tuesday. It's Musty singing Before the Party Is Over, and because he released on his own day, I was able to take the data before and after entered and do a comparison. So these numbers are mostly based off of Musty's entry into the table. So in total, he got 7.98% of the total points, so almost 8%. So that is quite a lot. Let's first look and see how that changed the rankings, and we can see he came in straight in at number 5. Everybody else moved down 1 spot because of that, apart from Finland and Czechia, who both jumped ahead of Latvia. So Latvia ended up being -3, whereas Finland and Czechia managed to keep their spots. So now we're up to 20 countries on the table. There's a pretty smooth increase of points going all the way from 20th up to 9th. And then there's quite a large gap between Spain and Luxembourg. So there's a little bit of a shelf where there's a gap of 16,000 points, so quite a big gap to jump ahead. And then we have Slovenia, France and Spain all kind of sitting together at roughly 6%. And then we have another big jump up to Belgium, the new entry, on 8%. And then we have these kind of like 10,000 point increments from Belgium up to Norway, Norway up to Lithuania, keeping in 3rd place, 10,000 more points up to Ukraine in 2nd, and another 10,000 points up to Angela Mango, who's on her throne at the top of the table. So let's look at the first column and see those 8% of the points that Belgium took. Who did they come from? And we can actually see that Musty did some damage at the top of the table. There's a lot of red at the top of the table, where if you compare to the previous graphs, there was a lot of green. So this shows that quite a few people have put him first, and by doing so, he's pushing down the top 5. So this is quite a big dramatic entry for a country to really make a splat at the top of the table. The biggest loser you can see there was Slovenia. Really interesting connection for me, and I can totally see how Slovenia and Belgium are connected. Both very dramatic, both have a slow build into a really great finale. They both have a real raw, earthy vulnerability to them. So I can really see how these two songs are connected. We can also see Ukraine as well being the second biggest loser in terms of point loss. Again, I can see a connection here. Slower song, very intimate, passionate. And then the third biggest loser was Italy in the number 1 spot, and also Poland. But again, as I said, this is that effect I already told you about, where a new song comes in and then sinks a little bit. But the key thing for me here is the amount of damage he's done at the top of the table. I've done so many of these charts now, it is almost always very green at the top. Moving further down the table, let's look for anyone who's out of sync. Again, this should really be going from green to red, but it's almost gone the opposite. It's flipped, it's going from red to green. So who's really green at the bottom? And we can see Finland and Czechia losing almost nothing, and that's why they were able to jump over Latvia. Well, Latvia lost 5 times more points than Czechia and 20 times more points than Finland. So you can see that's why they've moved down from 13th to 16th. Okay, so that's column 1. That is the pure points loss that affects rankings. Let's look at the second column, the relative points loss. How much of my points did I lose? And we can see the biggest loser here was Malta, losing almost 1/5 of their points, 18.53. So Malta really affected by this. Moldova as well, also losing 1/5 of their points. There wasn't that much to lose in the first place, so that feels a little bit harsh. Poland, the third biggest loser, losing 16% of their points. But again, that is the thing I already talked about. The key thing for me up here is actually Slovenia losing 13% of their points. That is just, a lot of people have listened to Belgium and Slovenia. They like both. Some of them are putting Slovenia ahead, some of them are putting Belgium ahead. A lot of people like both of them. So there's going to be more of that conflict. As someone who likes both of them, I also had a conflict between these two songs. So I can speak from first-hand evidence. The good news is that Slovenia and Belgium are in different semi-finals. So this is not going to affect Raven. But you'd have to think, if Musty was in semi-final 1, this would not be good news for Raven at all. They're very much in each other's niche and are going to affect each other. So you may say that Musty and Raven would not be terribly disappointed if the other person didn't qualify. I think both of them will qualify, but things happen. Also, I was also surprised to see that France lost a disproportionately small amount of points, only losing 3% of their points. I have to admit, I thought there was going to be a little bit more of a connection there. But another thing as well is these scores up the top. So Italy using 5% of their points, Ukraine losing 7%, Lithuania 4%, and Norway 7%. These are very big numbers for the numbers at the top. Keep in mind, they have so much more points in the first place. So them losing 5% is a much bigger thing to lose than, for example, Moldova down the bottom losing 20%. They had almost nothing to lose in the first place. So you got to factor in that the countries in the top are richer than the poor countries at the bottom who don't have as many points. It's art imitating life. Okay, so that is an update on the Eurovision scoreboard. Lots of juicy stuff happening. We still have 17 songs left to come. This weekend on Saturday, we're getting San Marino. The favorite there is Loredana Berta. She might not win, but of course I will take the points before she enters and after she enters. And then on Sunday, we potentially have Baby Lasagna Rim Tim Taggy Dim winning. That is, I'm quite sure, going to be up into the top 3, probably at least the top 5, and that's going to have a huge effect on who else is on the scoreboard. I'm going to be interested to see who could Croatia have the biggest effect on. Will he have an effect on Czechia, who's also kind of rocky? So of course, make sure that you're subscribed with notifications on so you get my video for that update when it happens. I'll probably do the next video as those two together rather than two separate videos. Okay, so what did you think about all of the stats? Do you have any feedback on the presentation? Do you want me to change anything in terms of the graphics? I'm doing these graphics on Excel for now because graphics software that I normally use is really bad for anything that's kind of data or numerical calculations. It's a disaster. That's why I'm keeping it in Excel for now. But if you've got any feedback, give it to me now. It's easier for me to make changes early rather than go back and have to change every single graph. So what did you think about all of these dramatic changes in the Eurovision scoreboard? Do you have any theories for why certain countries gained or lost that I missed? Leave me a comment in the comment section down below. I love to hear your insights because it helps me learn about these kind of relationships that are going between all the different songs. Thank you so much to an anonymous donor for supporting me on Buy Me a Coffee. No new donations on PayPal, but I am a full-time content creator. I do rely on donations. So if you want to support the channel, I'll leave links to you in the description down below. Thank you so much to my patrons for patronizing me from all over the world. On my Patreon, you can get original audio and visuals when I get copyrighted, some updates from the channel, a couple of early releases, and you can also be part of our My Eurovision Scoreboard group, which is particularly pertinent for this episode. But of course, thank you so much just for watching and maybe leaving a like and maybe sharing the video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in another Eurovision analysis video very soon. Goodbye.